for being here. I always appreciate seeing faces in the audience. If you would stand for the pledge, please, and a moment of silence following. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join me in a moment of silence and let us remember the 500,000 people who have passed because of COVID. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Ms. Lauer,
Present.
Dr. Powers,
Here.
Ms. Scott,
Here.
Mrs. Weiss,
Here.
Mr. Irwin,
Here.
Mrs. Killian,
Here.
Mrs. Lohr.
Here. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and read our vision and mission. Our vision is working together with our community. We inspire our students to discover their talents and rise to their greatest potential. Our mission is building on the strengths of our diverse community. We create an engaging, comprehensive educational environment that supports the growth of lifelong learners. I'm going to change the meeting schedule for a little bit, a couple changes. First of all, we have a resolution that was authored by board member Amy Lohr, and she is going to read this to us, and I'm going to pass it around for the board members to sign.
Okay, so this is a letter drafted, written from President Lauer and the rest of the board to our governor. Reads as follows. Governor Holcomb, on behalf of the Board of Trustees of the Vigo County School Corporation, I respectfully ask you to consider extending COVID-19 vaccination prioritization to Hoosier K-12 educators. As you know, having our students back in school full-time is a top priority for our whole state. Not only is it in the best interest of our students, it is also a critical component of our economic recovery. Parents and guardians need reliable school schedules so they can work themselves. We cannot provide that without adequate staffing, and that will remain difficult to achieve until our teacher workforce feels safe returning to school. In Vigo County, we are encouraged to see COVID numbers declining and vaccination rates increasing for the most at-risk populations. There is still great concern, however, among educators about the spread of the virus in a traditional school day. Our workforce, like other sectors, is aging, and many teachers have underlying conditions or close family members who are high risk. In addition, most substitute teachers are themselves retired teachers. We rely on them to staff our classrooms when full-time teachers are absent, but many of them have completely left the substitute pool because of fear of exposure to the virus. To reopen schools fully, we must prioritize their access to the vaccine. This will expedite Indiana's return to normalcy far beyond public education. We urge you to take immediate action on this. We cannot operate schools for the good of our students without teachers, essential workers, who feel safe, healthy, and ready to provide the best possible instruction every day. Thank you for your serious consideration of our request, and it's signed Jacqueline Lauer, and lines for the rest of the board members, and copies sent to Dr. Fox, Secretary of Education General, the Governor's Workforce Cabinet, and our state legislators.
Is that the motion, President Lauer?
Thank you. Yes, I need a motion.
I so move.
Thank you, Mr. Irwin. Thank you, Mrs. Scott. We have a motion and a second. Could we have roll call, please? And we will have roll call, as I have been told that those online want to hear our voices as we vote. So we'll have roll call, please.
Ms. Lauer,
Aye.
Dr. Powers,
Aye.
Ms. Scott,
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss,
Aye.
Mr. Irwin,
Aye.
Mrs. Killian,
Aye.
Mrs. Lohr.
Aye.
Thank you. again, we'll change the agenda a little bit. I would like to bring to the board's attention the secondary return to the school plan, the middle schoolers beginning a 4-day in-school service at March the 2nd, which is a week from tomorrow. And could I have a motion?
Do we need citizen comments, or are we doing that after? Okay. I make a motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second. Sorry, it was me.
Thank
I
you.
forgot to wait.
That's all right, I want to make sure. All right, we have a motion and a second. So, Mrs. Wilson?
Could we have our discussion?
Yes, I'm sorry. I do want to have a discussion before that, and we have the presenters, Tom Balatevich, Dr. Balatevich, and Dr. Mason will be presenting.
Tonight, we'd like to share our rationale for offering more in-person learning time in our middle and high school educational model. Since the pandemic began, the Vigo County School Corporation has been walking hand in hand with our local health department and medical professionals to make responsible decisions about educational models for our elementary, middle, and high school students. We have been transparent in reporting statistics, data points, and health trends that have determined our remote and our in-person learning. Our data are now informing us that middle and high school students are ready to move to more in-person learning. Dr. Balatevich and Dr. Mason will highlight data and relevant information for moving to this next step at the middle and high school levels.
Thank you. President Lauer, Deputy Superintendent Goller, members of the School Board of Trustees. Dr. Mason and I are here tonight to present information for you to make an informed decision about the proposal that is currently on the docket. I want to start off with going through some statistics. Please, if you have a question, I think it would be appropriate if you would like to ask. Also in attendance tonight, we have 3 of our physicians that help inform our decision-making, and they're in the audience. I have Dr. Brucken, Dr. Holder, and Dr. Hoyniki all in attendance tonight. We also do rely on Dr. Randy Stevens, and he was not able to be here this evening. This first slide depicts our cases since our return to school on January 4th. And on January 4th, as everybody knows, our elementary school came back in session. And then we picked a data point, which was the, you can see on the 14, after 14 days, trying to get my laser pointer to work, but it doesn't go that far, possible. But after 14 days, you could see the cases begin to decline. And they decline in all 3 levels, elementary, middle, and high. And this correlates with the decline that we see in the greater community in cases. Here's cases on campus the last 14 days. The dates you see at the bottom of the axis, 17th, the 24th, the 31st, those represent Wednesdays. On Wednesdays, we report our dashboard to the public. This is a snapshot in time. You can see, again, it's analogous to the first slide that I showed you, where we have a peak, and then after we've been in school for 14 days, then the cases decrease. We have staff cases and student cases. Again, that line of best fit that we talk about is a line in decline with cases. This slide is, we took this directly from the Indiana State Department of Health, and there is a discussion out there about cases and cases as opposed to the number of tests out there. The graph on the left indicates the number of positive cases we've had in the community. You can see that there is a decline. Again, looking at that line of best fit from the apex in November, there has been a sharp decline in cases in the county. On the right depicts the number of tests administered. These would be PCR tests. These wouldn't be rapid antigen tests. And those number of tests have plateaued. So there is a discussion out there that the reason why cases have gone down is because testing has decreased. There may be some discussion there that is valid, but for the most part, as our statistics warrant, it has plateaued, the testing has plateaued, but it hasn't decreased along with the same slope that the positive cases have decreased. These are Vigo County cases versus VCSC cases, specifically VCSC children. We received this information from our local health department. Our local health department does a tremendous job, absolutely tremendous job, not only contact tracing and setting policy and procedure for our county, but also collecting data. In this data, you can see where that spike was in our community. In November, we hit that pinnacle. And from that pinnacle of cases, we have slowly declined in cases. But look at the student cases at the bottom. Now you're dealing with a different N, a different number, and that numbers have magnitude. You can see that the children cases spiked along with the community cases, but that line is a lot flatter for students. This graph, there's 4 graphs there. This information comes directly from the CDC. The CDC publishes COVID-19 modeling, and that modeling is updated mostly every week. You can look at the upper half. Those are new weekly deaths in the state of Indiana. This is specific to Indiana. And you can see on the right, top right quadrant, where those cases are in decline of fatalities. Fatalities are a lagging indicator of cases, and you can see that that red line in the top right quadrant is in steep decline. This is the ensemble model. That means it takes all of the models, and it is an average of those models. So again, another piece of evidence that the lagging indicator of fatalities is in decline. I consult with our doctors on a weekly basis. We don't make decisions in the vacuum. We consult with our medical professionals, some of which are represented here tonight. One of the individuals I talk to quite frequently is Dr. Holder. She's the medical director of Union Medical Group and also a pediatrician. We have had discussions about our concern about our students' social and emotional well-being. It's very, very an important topic at this point in time, and there is a tremendous amount of concern there about our students' social and emotional well-being. One of the things that we know in schools, and this has become even more apparent and highlighted throughout COVID, are reports of abuse and neglect. Our students rely on the people that they trust in our schools to report abuse and neglect. Absent of those people in their lives, those cases go unreported. You can see when we came back to school in September 2020, we had 188 reports. Kids had a lot to say. As you can see, we were remote November, December in a lot of different ways. Those cases went down. As of February 10th, in February, 74 reports already. This is a concern, that when students don't have that reliable person in their life to report something that may be occurring in their life, that they go unreported. Had a call from supervisors from DCS in the summertime, worried about the lack of reporting in the summer. Along with that, and as a companion argument, are school-based crisis assessments. These are students that either talk about self-harm or have suicidal ideation or attempt but don't complete suicide. These are crisis-based assessments that we have. In 2019, 2020, we had 175. So far this year, we had 89. It's lagging. That's a concern of ours. Again, our counseling department, our deans, our principals, our teachers do a tremendous job listening to students, reporting concerns, getting students help that they need. If our students aren't in school, this makes it more difficult. Acute hospitalizations for Vigo County youth. Again, you can see the growth in those cases with our youth. These come from Harsha Behavior Center, 305, 485, 562, 101. It's a decline. It's a decline, and it is important that students are in school so we could adequately take care of our students in school. I wanted to briefly touch upon our Indiana guidelines. I'm going to show you in the next slide the CDC guidelines and show you the stark contrast. There's been a lot of talk about the CDC guidelines that have recently been published. Indiana, I believe, has done a great job with their guidelines and their color-coded chart. They have put together a color-coded chart that's based on a rubric. Anybody here in education knows that a good assignment has a rubric. This has a rubric based upon cases per 100,000 and also positivity rate. And so they add those together and they put you into a color category: blue, yellow, orange, and red. Vigo County has never been red. That's a testament to Vigo County. That's a testament to our health department, our medical community, our schools, our local government, making the right decisions, enforcing masking, but we've never been red. Orange, we were orange for most of the time, until recently, but orange says you could be in school. But we have been very conservative about making that decision. We have been very slow to make that decision because we wanted to wait until the time was right. Currently, we're yellow. This is the third week we're in yellow. What does yellow say? Vigo County has been yellow. And trend data says we could be about ready to turn blue. We have to be careful. But when you're in yellow, you can go to school, all grades, in person. We've been here 3 weeks. If we're going to trend blue, that's a continued discussion that we're going to have. We don't know if we'll be blue this week or it'll be the following week, but it's certainly a trend. Based on a rubric, comes out every Wednesday. We know where we stand with the state. I'm sure many of you follow that. Here are the CDC guidelines. CDC guidelines does not have a rubric. They have two very distinct categories: cases per 100,000 and positivity rate. CDC says you take the one that is the worst, that's the category you're in. So you can see cases per 100,000, we were at 127. Put us over that 100 mark, put us in red. But where were we in positivity rate? 2.8. They don't have a rubric to score that, so we have to take the red category. Personally, and in our task force meets every Tuesday, we prefer the state model. We think the state model is conservative. We've approached it in a conservative manner. We've made recommendations to the board and to Dr. Hayworth in a very conservative manner, and we'll continue to do so. But the CDC guidelines, which gained a lot of attention, it's informative, but we cannot rest upon a couple data. We have to look at the number of cases per 100,000. We have to look at positivity rate. We have to look at the number of staff members that are available in our schools. There's a lot of data points that we have to answer to. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Mason.
So what we have here is just a map of the state of Indiana to provide a little bit of a snapshot so that public can see what is happening across the state of Indiana with schools that are as large as North and South or even larger. And so there in the left-hand column, for those of you looking this way, it is not a comprehensive list by any means, but it is a list of schools that are either on a 4-day week or a 5-day week, or they are moving to a 4-day or 5-day week. And then, of course, we just wanted to point out those districts surrounding us locally who are also already in that kind of model. And so one of the things that we do as educators is learn all the time from things that we do. So one thing that really helped us in terms of planning for return to school for our secondary students was the opportunity to have all students in our buildings at middle and high school earlier this year. While that was a short stretch, we learned a lot. We had plans in place and followed those plans, but as any plan goes, if it's a good one, then you hope to make it better. And so that's what we've done. Ever since our students came out of a 5-day-a-week experience at the secondary level, we have worked with principals and teachers to try to improve upon those plans. And so the main areas are what we're going to kind of talk through briefly here. These are what I would consider to be the hot points that people have been concerned with as we move back into school. And so for lunch, every building is set up differently in terms of not only the number of students that you're dealing with in a lunch session, but also just the spaces that are available to you. So there is not a one-size-fits-all plan with any of these items. But in general, you're going to see at lunch an effort to space students at least 3 to 6 feet apart. Schools are utilizing auditoriums, auxiliary gyms, teachers' lounges, and various classrooms in an effort to keep students separated at that distance during lunch. You'll see staggered lunch lines where students are not all waiting in the same line at the same time. Every school has assigned seats or a QR code if it's not the same seat that you're assigned to every day. There is a QR code on that table, and students have to use that QR code to document where they are sitting for that day. And of course, we have staff working in those areas to ensure that that happens each day. We have assigned locations. If students are released from their assigned area for lunch, then they have another assigned area to report to. Of course, masking is huge. We all know it's hard to eat with a mask, but as soon as you're finished eating, you should be masking up. And again, the key there is having adults in those areas to monitor that that is happening. And of course, sanitation stations are available. Passing periods, probably the most difficult one, quite honestly, just because it happens at designated times throughout the course of the day. And they're in probably the tightest areas in our building. But all of our schools are using directional arrows, which ensures that students are going either all in the same direction in an effort to kind of keep everyone moving. We have up and down staircases designated. The key is this one, that we have teachers on duty, and those teachers are helping to ensure that students stay masked during that time, because that is the most important piece during passing periods. Also, we're asking that those individuals help keep students moving so that they're not congregating at a certain locker or a certain space. Intercom reminders are always helpful, and then just a reminder that our high school passing periods are either 5 minutes or 6 minutes, and our middle school passing periods are either 4 minutes or 5 minutes. In the classroom, we have seating charts that teachers utilize. That helps us with contact tracing, but it's also nice for students to know exactly where they're supposed to be, which helps with keeping students spaced throughout that class period. Teachers already have access to desk shields. They've had that since the beginning, but we do have more of those, and that would be something that we would make sure any teacher who wants that and maybe didn't already have one to have one of those to utilize in their area. Students will be separated 3 feet apart where possible, and I'm going to say, let's key in on where possible. I think we know that our schools are all different sizes, our classrooms are different sizes, and 3 feet is not possible in every single classroom. I wish it was, I wish I could say it was, but it is not. So again, seating charts are important for contact tracing. Where possible, students are going to be separated, and there are areas within our buildings and even some classrooms where that can happen. Sanitizing between class periods is something that we've been doing since the beginning and of course will continue. And again, the key in the classroom is that masking is enforced. And so we're asking that that continues, and then of course access to sanitizer in all classrooms. At the end of the school day, you'll have students that have staggered release, schools with staggered release times, whether they're releasing walkers and then maybe 2 or 3 minutes later, bus riders, car drivers, that kind of thing. The big one, especially at our high schools, is the use of multiple exits at the end of the day. You know, we like to keep things orderly at school, and so in a normal year, students would have designated exits that they would leave from. And we've opened that up because our goal now is that we're keeping kids spread out. And so we want kids to be able to utilize multiple exits rather than 1 or 2. And then the one at the bottom is testing. And so we want to just let everyone know that our school staff has access to rapid testing if they feel symptomatic at any point in time. And that rapid testing is available with our VCSC nursing staff. And there is a form that teachers have access to. It's easy for them to get to. They already have access to that, but of course that is something that we would ensure everybody has quick and easy access to. This slide talks about classes or sections that are 30 students or more. And you'll see in that first column, we're talking about middle school. So Sarah Scott, the first number 2 there indicates the number of sections that there are 30 or more students in that section. And then the second number is the total number of sections available and the percentage. So you'll see for our middle schools, we have less than 4%, just less than 4% of classrooms with 30 or more students. At the high school, it's less than 1%. Down there in the blue, those are the courses in general where you're going to see higher numbers of students in a section. And at middle school, it's our related arts classes, PE, choir, FACS, business, band. Those are the classes that allow for more students at any given time. And typically, not in every case, but typically those are assigned to bigger areas within the school. You'll also notice with middle school, GT, that's our Gifted and Talented program. Those programs are scheduled to the max for students that have the availability for those. And so there are some GT programs in the middle school that you'll see in a regular sized classroom with 30 students. At the high school, it looks very similar. PE classes, health, choir, band. Some of our social studies classes hit 30, and as well as some of our more popular electives. And Dr. Valetevich, I'll turn it back over to you.
I want to go back just to this one slide because I've been asked this question. What are the numbers in each county? That's the positivity rate. So this is an excellent slide that we have up there. You can see the different positivity rates in the different counties, and that many of those counties have higher positivity rates than Vigo County, and they're either in session or coming back into session. So I wanted to point that out. Now at this point, I did allude to the fact that we have 3 of our physicians that help guide us through the process, Dr. Brucken, Dr. Hoyniki, and Dr. Holder. And I would just like to invite them up if they would like to come up to say a few words about just where we are in the community and where we are with this plan.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Holder. I probably know some of y'all in the audience. I'm a pediatrician. I've been here since 2002, and I've been working real closely with Eleni and Tom, just to kind of give a perspective from someone in the community who sees the children, and also I interact with the parents quite a bit as well. So, you know, they come in and I get to hear from their perspectives as well. So, what Tom and I talk a lot about here lately is about, you know, some of my concerns in the office. Gosh, I've gone from maybe 20-30% of my visits involving some sort of mental distress or, you know, stressors on the family or the children. And I think we've gone to more of a 75%. So as a primary reason for visiting my office or a secondary. So we're seeing an awful lot of stress, and the families are stressed, the children are stressed. And, you know, I know that COVID in general has been a big disruptor for families in our entire community. But they're at a phase in their growth and development, they being the children in that middle to high school level where, you know, they're really growing as humans, as individuals, decision makers, you know, testing their ability to make decisions. And, you know, without the sounding boards, which we all know that middle schoolers aren't, you know, the best advice givers, but they really are where they learn to bounce off those ideas and grow and get that feedback that they need. So, you know, from my perspective, I would say that they need it, the parents need it, but the children really are lacking in that. So that's my perspective. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I could talk all day on it just because it's so important, but I want to thank you for your time.
Now, I'll have Dr. Hoyniki come on up.
Right now, my current role is EMA Director for Vigo County, which we've done about 14 years now, but I've been in the community for about 30, and most of my professional life has been doing emergency medicine at Union Hospital. What I really do appreciate with the school corporation is it's been since February. We have now had Tuesday afternoon phone calls and working very well with the health department and school corporation, looking at our community, and that I think is really important. We see the counties around us, we see the state of Indiana, and then we see nationally. But really, when we talk about disasters, everything is homegrown. And so this is our community. And what I think is so important is that we look at, it's multifactorial, not just one number. And there have been times that you basically are giving it your best professional opinion. And sometimes you're spot on, and sometimes you're getting a little curveball. But what the school corporation has done is really looking at those numbers and deciding is what is the best for our community. So it's not a knee-jerk reaction. They're looking for many, many avenues. And they have pulled the trigger many times and saying, even though we would love to be in school 4 or 5 days, is really important at this point in time that we pull back. And the fact is that they're constantly watching it, constantly monitoring it, is, you know, I have a comfort level that as we move forward, if we have to, we'll look at it reasonably, and if we have to retreat, we will, and then move forward as is necessary. I think one of the major concerns right now is watching the variants that are out there. Some of the B117, there are some in the country now. That may have an effect on our positivity rate, the rate of spread. Some of the numbers say it can spread 40 times faster than the COVID that we've seen here. So that will be a moving number. And then the amount of vaccinations that we're doing, as the vaccine is coming in, it is going out. And I anticipate probably in the next 24, 48 hours, we will get new guidance from the governor on the groups and cases that we can go ahead and vaccinate. So it is multifactorial, but I really believe the county and all persons coming together have done a wonderful job to really digest the numbers and decide what is best for our community, because that's what's really important. I know we look at the counties surrounding us, that's great, but our populations are different, what we do are different. You know, we are in District 7 for Indiana. Our neighbors to the east, Clay County, have 21,000 people. We have 108,000 people. So our numbers are going to be different. So yes, we can look at our bordering counties, but again, we have to do what's right for Vigo County. And I think the school corporation is doing an excellent job in coordination with the health department, getting those numbers, and then watching it and making adjustments that are necessary. So thank you for your time, and I'll be back there if you have any questions.
Hi guys, I'm Darren Brucken from the Health Department. I'm the health officer for Vigo County. I'm also a hospitalist physician at Regional Hospital. And I've been working with COVID every day since it got here, in one capacity or another, mostly through the hospital and of course through public health as well. From the onset of the pandemic, we have worked daily with, I know more about Tom than I care to ever have known about Tom. But we have been in constant communication, going through these plans, even plans that never made it to this type of a forum. With ideas as they cropped up, we were able to discuss those things, balancing the thought of health of the students, health of the staff. At this point, I think the stream of people to come up here and advocate for in-person education is going to be enormous, and it should be. The pros of it far outweigh any risk that we've been able to observe through the months. It's a year now at this point. You know, from a public health standpoint, we look at things not only locally, but statewide, and also even nationally and internationally. You know, we look to the European countries, we look to the Asian countries. We look to see what role does school play in spread. Are we seeing a lot of student-to-staff transmission? We are not. Are we seeing a lot of outbreaks in schools that are school-based? We have not seen that. We look at the morbidity of the students, the mortality of the students. It is minimal, thankfully. We look at the morbidity and mortality of the staff. They are a vulnerable population. As you age and have comorbid conditions, of course you're going to have some comorbid conditions that are there that's going to elevate people's risk of serious illness should they contract COVID-19. The one thing about our schools is the mitigation strategies that have been in place since the get-go. The masking, the attention to distancing, the sanitation, the hand washing, all of those things play dividends. I think at this point, from the public health standpoint, from the Vigo County Health Department, we are absolutely in support of this resolution to go back to in-person learning for the middle schools, followed shortly thereafter by the high schools. As with every single statement during this pandemic, it has to come with a caveat statement, and that is, that's if things hold. We continue to watch the numbers, we continue to watch the trends. Right now, we are blessed from a community standpoint because our community numbers are falling. They are staying down. We are seeing also hospitalization rates staying down. And that is an important endpoint for us in the healthcare delivery standpoint. We're seeing our ICU admissions down. Our death rate has held pretty stable, and it will because those people that have been hospitalized for weeks, most of them will die. And that's unavoidable, unfortunately. But as the new cases fall, hopefully that death rate will also decline over time. So Jackie and Doreen and I were going to stick around. We'd like to hear any citizen input. If you have questions directed specifically to us, we're more than happy to try to address those. Thank you for your time.
So with that, the recommendation that Mrs. Lauer alluded to earlier is that we would like for middle school students to return Tuesday through Friday, beginning March 2nd, followed shortly after by high school students on March 16th. We are asking for a 4-day-a-week. That Monday, we would like to keep as a remote learning day on Monday. 2 reasons for that. One, it allows our contact tracing staff, our nurses, to keep up with any contact tracing that occurs over the weekend. Any weekend cases are dropped, so to speak, on Monday. And so in an effort to make sure that we are staying up with that contact tracing and ensuring that no student who shouldn't be present isn't present, we would like to continue with that remote Monday. The second piece of that is we would like to continue that practice with remote learning. As you all know, this year is our first year with Chromebooks, as well as our learning management system of Canvas. And we've had a great opportunity to work with those two products, and we would like to continue that practice on Mondays. And so with that, I think that Dr. Balatevich, myself, our medical experts are open to questions from the board.
I asked this question in the executive session, and I want to ask it in public as well. With the elementary schools, we made the decision to go on a case-by-case basis with the schools rather than a mass closure. Obviously, as Dr. Brucken said, things get considerably worse in the county or whatever, but from a staffing availability standpoint, are we going to address this school by school or sometimes classroom by classroom rather than entire shutdown?
Yes, thank you for asking that question. That is the approach that we would like to take. We have found that actually it could be, in some cases, a classroom by classroom scenario, and it may be a school by school scenario, but we would much rather go that route than a whole district or secondary level shutdown. So that would be the plan.
I'm just wondering if you could explain why the delay for the high school to come back in.
I think the point of the delay there is just to ensure that everything is working well with the middle school. We have kind of done a delay, a step in throughout our entire process, and that really allows both for teachers, principals, administrative staff, it allows for us to take the opportunity to see, is there something that we need to work through and work out prior to adding the next group of students. And so it's just a process that we've followed to this point, and it has worked well for us. So that's why we would request the delay there.
Do we have extra masks available at all the schools in case we need it? And is there an entrance and exit sanitizers? Kids come into school and when they exit?
Yes, there are sanitation stations in and around all of the buildings. There's an actual push sanitizer in every classroom, and so you'll find those in every large space too. Most of our middle schools enter through their gymnasiums. Those sanitation stations are there as well, so yes. And that's one of those things. If we find that there's an area where we need to add, we'll certainly add.
We really haven't addressed extracurricular activities, but how are they being handled?
Extracurricular has gone very well to this point. Right now, we're down to just a wee little bit left in our winter sports seasons. We have the sectional draw for boys basketball, so sectionals begin next week. And at our basketball games, every participating student is allowed 4 tickets. So that limits the number of people coming in and out of our gymnasiums, and it has worked beautifully, very, very well. And so there's very little left we still have some middle school games as well. They're actually only allowed 2 guests, and that's because our middle school gymnasiums are typically smaller spaces, and so we just continued with that practice there. For the spring season, we will continue doing the same mitigation strategies we've done to this point, although we'll be outside, which in itself will be much, much better. It worked very well in the fall. We will begin our seasons with a 4-ticket limit, just like we did in the winter, but at some point we'll reevaluate that, have some conversation with the task force based on what's happening. We do not have a lot of attendance, I'll be real honest, with our outdoor spring events, and so it's rare to get a large crowd anyway, and if we're limiting to the detriment of a family member who wants to come watch their niece or nephew or something like that, we would want to evaluate those situations. But athletics has gone very, very well to this point.
I have a question. If you're outside watching baseball or softball, are you going to require the fans to be masked?
Absolutely. We did that in the fall, and again, credit to those that come and watch our athletic events. Those from Vigo County understand that if they want to see their athlete participate, that comes right along with it. And while we thought that that was going to be really hard to monitor and, have to redirect, we just don't have to do that. Once in a blue moon, there might be somebody who isn't masked and we ask and they comply. But typically for us at our athletic events, even outdoors in the fall, it has been a visiting school situation where we have had an issue with masking. And when those happen, we address those with the administration from whatever school that they came from.
But I have a question. Oh, sorry. When is spring break?
The last week of March, the
So,
26th, I think.
Will it be 23rd?
This will give us 2 weeks prior to spring break, I
March
believe.
29th to
Okay.
April 5th
Right.
is spring break.
Mrs. Gillian?
You had mentioned earlier that your larger class sizes are choir, band, orchestra, those types of scenarios. With choir and band, of course, you have to use your mouth.
Mhm.
Are the students remaining masked, or how is that working for the students?
Yes, that's actually a great question. I think right now in those areas, they may not be masked when they're singing because there's room for space. So that's something that we'll have individual principals at each building talk through with their music department to ensure that if space isn't where it needs to be, then what are those other mitigations? Is it masking? In many cases, there's not a whole lot of singing. There are other activities that they're doing to support those things, but they are singing at the high schools. So that's an individual, school by school, and in some cases even teacher based on the classroom situation. And that's a perfect example of what we might have to modify based on what happens when you bring your middle school students in, and what did you have to do, what worked well, what didn't work well. And so then when you roll into that high school experience and bringing those students back in, we may have already resolved that.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Mrs. Wise, do you have any comments as our health department?
No, not at this time.
Okay.
Mrs. Lauer, just one point, I wanted to go back to Dr. Power's question, if I could, really, because I think you were asking that question because spring break happens after the 16th,
Right.
and,
How much time is going to be in prior to that?
right. And so if the board wanted us to, we could go back to our task force and look at that 16th date, if you wanted us to, so.
Well, I think we can see how this first March date goes also.
I will just say that for my part, the overwhelming comment from the public that I have had is please get the kids back to school as soon as possible. So, yeah.
President Lauer, do we have citizen comments before we, on this topic?
Yes, we do.
It's because there are people for and against it. We have to remember there's many sides of this way to look at it.
We have, people, yes, go ahead.
I just have one more question. Is there any concern, I mean, we just as a board passed a resolution asking the governor to prioritize teacher vaccinations. And so we know that that's a concern. And I'm just wondering, from an administration standpoint, do you have concerns about being able to staff adequately?
That's a fantastic question. We look at that every week in our task, for the dashboard on Wednesday, we look at those numbers, and, that is a concern that we have. We have not seen that come to fruition yet, but we keep very, very close eye on those numbers. We have a system now, and this is one of the big things that Thanksgiving did for us, and Dr. Mason mentioned it. We have to learn from the things that go very well, and we have to learn from things that may not go so well. And so after the Thanksgiving break, Dr. Hayward wanted us to come up with a new system. And that system would address teacher availability, student attendance in our schools, and then go by school basis based upon those two factors and other community factors. And that's what we've done, is to look at those two things. And we've always kept track since the beginning here of our employee groups and their availability. But we put a microscope on top of that with this new plan to really dial in. Our principals know exactly what to do and when to call their director to let them know that they're starting to see some problems. And we think that works very well, but it's always a concern at this point. And we just need to remain vigilant about it and then react to it when we need to. If we need to put a school in remote for a week, that's what we'll need to do. We haven't arrived at that point yet, but I don't think we're afraid to do that.
We have two who signed up to speak on this specific topic, and that's what we will entertain at this moment. So Leslie, would you like to say a few words? I'll call you up first.
I have a third one that came in afterwards.
Oh, okay.
If you would consider that.
It did have to do with this. Yes, in school. All right, thank you.
Hello, my name is Leslie Ellis. I'm a parent of a junior at Terre Haute South Vigo High School. He's our fourth child. We've had 4 kids go through the school system, and we are really proud that our kids have gone to school here. They've all done very well in college. We've got 3 that our third one just graduated from Purdue in December, and they're all doing well. So we thank Vigo County School Corporation for a good education. I also thank you all for the presentation. It was very informative, and it reinforced my research that I've been doing regarding the children in the classroom. And we feel it's imperative that the middle school and high school kids get back as soon as possible. We've noticed our student, he's an A student, our son, and he's suffering academically and mental health-wise. We've seen a change in him. He's usually not stressed at all. Excuse me, a little nervous. But lately he's been very stressed. And one class that he's struggling with, the teacher doesn't have internet. So that's been very difficult for him. He'll send emails, and she said that we need to allow a minimum of 48 hours for response. Well, sometimes an assignment is due before then, and it's just been very difficult. But I've also called some of his friends' parents, and we all believe the kids really need to be in school. And we understand there may need to be some adjustments if numbers go back up, if some classes need to be closed down, or some schools, for another increase. But from everything that I've read, it looks like everything is trending down, which is excellent news. I know we have 2 blue counties next to us, which is good news on the state website. But we would really appreciate you approving this plan. And the only change I would make is I would like the high school students to start sooner, but rather than later. I think every day counts, and he actually came to me, my son, and said that he's worried he's not going to be ready for college, and that concerns me. I'm concerned the colleges may have to do some retroactive work to get the children ready for the college years, but thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And Julie?
Thanks, Stacy. Thank you so much. I kind of feel a little bit, I have to tell you, like Tom Cruise in the movie A Few Good Men. So this is what it looks like inside a school board meeting. Hey, I will be the first to tell you, I've not come to a lot of school board meetings, and shame on me for not doing so. But part of that, in truth, is because I believe in all of you, and I believe in what you do. As the daughter of 2 retired high school public education teachers, I understand the significance of what
your role is on this school board. I understand the significance of what our teachers are. Much like Leslie, I have a son who just graduated from Purdue University in December. I too can commend the Vigo County School Corporation, especially Dr. Bob Fisher, who will forever be one of the greatest teachers in the history of this school corporation. I just want to go on record as saying that. My son was a presidential scholar, and I know what he gained from the school corporation had a large part to do with him being successful at Purdue University. So I thank you for that. I thank also the administrators and Dr. B and Dr. Mason. Thank you for this presentation, was great. When Leslie spoke with me, we both have sons now who are seniors at Terre Haute South. And she and I have communicated often because of our sons, not only because they're seniors together, but because they're also tennis partners in doubles. But we know that our boys are suffering. Parker's grades, while still an AB student and on the honor roll, went from being a straight A student to not having those straight A's anymore. He's a little bit competitive with his brother, having been where he was at Purdue, and I think he strives for those same kinds of scholarships and those same kinds of accolades, and I hear him saying, well, I'm not going to get any scholarships. Well, I'm not going to be able to do those things. And it breaks your heart as a parent to hear them just sort of step away and say, I've just given up. But that's what I feel like I hear from his little voice when he tells me that, is I've just kind of said, whatever. I also eavesdrop on some of his calls, his Zoom calls with his teachers, and you can hear in the teachers' voices, the ones that are enthusiastic and still keeping the kids engaged, and the ones that are like, oh my God, what are we doing? You can just hear it, and I feel for them as well. And I understand that there are teachers that are concerned about going back and concerned about their health, and I appreciate that. But I can't think of a more essential worker than a teacher in what we are trying to do with our kids and our students. And we put essential workers out there every day in grocery stores and in all the other things in the medical field. Dr. Brucken and all of the physicians, thank you so much for what you do as well. But I think our teachers are essential too. And I think it's so essential to these people as we raise these individuals to become adults that we get them back on track. I feel like we're going to have a generation of, in some cases, unemployable people because they've lost so much in what we've tried to offer them. Not every kid is going to go to college. Not every kid goes through college prep classes. What have we missed out for those kids as well? I genuinely am here today because I care, because I want these kids to be back in school, not just for my own son, but for everybody. I think it's critical to this community that we get our kids back into school. And I would also say I would vote for not waiting until March 16th either. But I thank you for your time, and I thank you for what you all do. I know it's not easy, and I know the decisions haven't been easy. And thank you for your time. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you. And we have a third speaker on this topic. That's Gina Bradley. Yes, ma'am.
I'll be better at reading it than I will just saying it out. So if it sounds like a letter, I drafted it today. I've had meetings with our school and some of our teachers. Thank you again for giving us the opportunity to address you. Thank you for the presentation. It was wonderful to hear and see. I currently too have a junior in the Vigo County School Corp. I have a child that's a freshman in college who went through Terre Haute North. And again, I echo everything that Julie has said in their education experience. We have been impressed and been thankful for Vigo County School Corp. But I'm here today to request an immediate return to full-time in-person learning at the middle and high school levels. Since August, I've been communicating the learning difficulties our family and student have experienced to our school, our director, and our superintendent. While our school and director have responded to offer resolutions and help in any way in any of the special concerns that we've had in regard to our student, it is still evident that the problems lie within the lack of face-to-face, in-person schooling that the children are missing out on. In our home, we tell our kids we don't expect them to be perfect, but we do expect them to be excellent. And that is giving your 100% commitment to the things that you decided to commit to. School is one of those in our home. I have a child that is 100% committed, and he has a parent that's 100% committed to helping him learn in the absence of having a teacher. And what that can look like sometimes is an agenda that he fills out every day that tells what he has to do for the day. He has 7 classes to do that for. Note cards on, did I read the chapter? Other note cards that are, what are my vocab? Other note cards, what do I think my teacher might ask me? That's one class, and this is one of the easiest classes that he has to deal with. So he has 7 classes, 7 different sets of instructions, reading, videos, homework. He takes classes like AP US History for college credit, Spanish 3 for college credit. They are not learning any Spanish at all. Physics and trigonometry for college credit. In the mix of all this self-teaching, my child also has ADD. So he struggles in the minor details of things. And so when a teacher has 20 kids in his class, and you have 5 kids that might, on a consistent basis, have decided they're not going to do work anymore, and my son misses a detail in the 7 classes that he's been doing on an assignment, then the teacher automatically, without that face-to-face interaction, is lumping him in with the 5 kids who are doing nothing this semester. And that's incorrect. He's giving his best effort in the overload of information that he's receiving. And unfortunately, he will see a 0 on that assignment because the teacher has no relationship with him. They're not checking the 504 plan, or they may not be understanding what each individual student is trying and is engaged in learning. So we've had no communication since we returned in January on plans to return to full time in school. We have not been asked as students or parents to give feedback on what we're experiencing. But for 5 months, we've watched surrounding school districts, including Plainfield and Brownsburg, who are our size, successfully implement this full-time in school. This week, we were given my son's 12th grade course selection. So we have a hard decision. What courses is my son going to choose to take? I don't even know if he's going to be in school full-time. So being a child who might want to go into engineering, it's probably likely that he needs calculus as a prerequisite. And he needs to know, is he going to have to teach himself calculus? Or do we compromise in that excellent standard that we've told our child and say, take every easy class you possibly can, because you're going to have to teach yourself 3 days a week? That's a difficult thing to tell your child to do. And so
30 seconds, ma'am.
yes, so effectively, as they were describing, I have an A student who has become a B and C student. And as my student is becoming a senior, he's now forced to make a decision. Will he stay at North with his friends that he's developed, the teachers and school that he loves and would love to graduate from? Or do I need to leave this district and take him where he can have an education that's going to advance him, full in-time person, to go to college and get those scholarships and get in the programs that he wants? So I would ask that you consider the children go in full-time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes our audience comments, and we have a motion on the board. I would like to have call for a vote.
I actually have one thing I'd like to add.
Okay, please.
So we've talked a lot about the dates. The only thing that I would say is we've talked about the high school date a lot, whether we're going to make it immediate and leave it the 16th. You know, Dr. B said there's some room for wiggle there. I just don't want to, come March 13th at school and say, all right, next week the high schoolers, March 13th, they would know because March 16th is the date. But come the end of next school week, say, high school is coming back next week, announce it on Friday, it happens on Monday, or Tuesday. I don't think that's fair to the teachers. So the date needs to be somewhat seen into. Maybe not so much tonight, but let the administrations, the team, Dr. Hayward, Dr. Gold, or the administrators talk about that. But I don't want something where it happens on Friday and the following Tuesday. teachers have to be ready for that.
Right, we have unfortunately had to make some of those decisions when we've had high numbers at some of the schools, and it's very stressful for all parties involved, so you're right, we certainly need to give heads up. Yeah, Dr. Valatevich?
Sorry. I think Mr. Irwin and members of the board, what we'll do is, depending on what you do here with the vote tonight here, we'll take that back to our task force and our other groups with Mr. Cox and have that discussion rather quickly after you vote tonight to take that under advisement.
Thank you.
Could I ask one more thing?
Yes, go ahead.
There's been talk, and I know I asked this in an executive session, but about mental health issues. Is there a way we can push out to parents for that kids are struggling, or if parents are even struggling, what type of resources are offered within our school corporation that they can use and utilize? Is there some type of communication we can give to parents and students that they have that available to them?
Yeah, we could work with Mr. Riley to put out something to parents. Dr. Mason and myself and Dr. Fenton, along with Mr. Riley, can
Thank you.
craft something.
Also, Mrs. Trillian, we're working on a very robust remediation program, not only for summer, but for spring tutoring for our students, so we can provide some evening remediation, and especially in the areas of math and language arts.
Thank you, Dr. Gold.
I would just like to say, I think I'm happy to support what we have here, and I thank everybody who worked on it to put it together, but just in talking to folks over the past week or so, I think that moving that high school start date up is important, and if that can be something we can work on after we move here, I'd love to hear about that later.
I won't make this a habit, I promise.
That's all right, that's all right.
But it would be good if there was a clear motion on the floor so we know what to work with. So whether that's going to be moving that date up so we know where to work from. So
I would like to give a friendly amendment to the previous motion to move the date up a week for the high school.
So just have 1 week in between.
Okay, this is a friendly amendment. Our motion as it stands, or originated, would be that there would be a return for the middle school students to a 4-day school beginning March the 2nd. And your friendly amendment suggests that the high school
Starts a week earlier.
return to a 4-day school with a Monday and still stay as an e-learning day, and that would be on March the 9th.
March the 9th.
Yes. So the original motion, the person who made the original motion must determine whether they're going to accept the friendly amendment or not.
Right.
I accept. I will second your friendly amendment.
Okay, so then we need a vote on the friendly amendment.
May I just ask, someone had just texted me and said the only available SAT date is March 13th. So if kids happen to be quarantined, they would miss that SAT date. Do we need to take into consideration that?
I think we need to consider that there were a lot of plans that have already been in place, and I don't know if we're throwing a curveball to the principals.
Could you maybe come back up to the podium and address because from my perspective, I wasn't clear or maybe just convinced about why a 2-week lag is necessary. So why would a 1-week lag be helpful in any way? I don't know why that would be important.
I think as the reason for the lag was as we come back into school and things start moving with all students there, that we needed a little bit of time with that lag to get the middle school in first, make sure we'll have buses that are full now, we'll have classrooms that are full, we'll have hallways and cafeterias, and just wanted that time to be able to work out the middle school first, and then make sure we have full attention on that high school when it returns. That was the base. And the other thing was, we wanted to make sure that if there was spread of the virus going on, that we would be able to look at that and make some informed decisions about it. Those were the primary reasons, Mrs. Laura.
And I would just add, as I mentioned earlier, we were doing that in 2-week blocks previously, and that's where the 2 weeks came from for this particular recommendation.
I think my personal preference would be get them all in as quick as possible.
So partly it was based on precedent, and partly it was based on our task force recommendation, but if you guys, there's a motion, and we'll follow whatever motion you guys put out there and vote on.
Let's see, Dr. Powers had a friendly motion. Do we have a first or a second on that?
There was a second on my friendly amendment, and then the person who made the original motion, Hank, Mr. Irwin, accepted the friendly amendment.
Okay.
There is a question, we need to vote on the friendly amendment before we have any more discussion now.
All right, we will take a vote on the friendly amendment, which is moving the high school students to a 4-day week, Tuesday through Friday, with Monday remaining an e-learning day, starting March the 9th.
And middle schools, March 2nd.
Middle schools will be March the 2nd. Again, 4-day week, Tuesday through Friday, with Monday being an e-learning day. Okay, and we have a roll call.
Ms. Lauer,
Aye.
Dr. Powers,
Aye?
Ms. Scott, no. Mrs. Wise,
Aye.
Mr. Irwin,
Aye.
Mrs. Killian,
Aye.
Mrs. Lore.
Just to explain my vote, I'm gonna say aye, but I would prefer for them to all be back in March 2nd, but this is a compromise, so aye.
Motion carries. Thank you all
We
for.
have to now take a, we have to vote on the motion, the original motion now.
No,
Right, for the amendment, so we'll have another roll call on the.
That was just to accept the amendment, and now we have to go through doing all this.
No, I think that was.
You vote on accepting the friendly amendment, and now the original motion is amended, so now we have to vote the original motion as amended.
Okay. Shall I repeat this? The original motion as
As amended.
amended will read as March 2nd, middle schoolers, Tuesday through Friday, e-learning day, and March 9th for the high schoolers, Tuesday through Friday, Monday e-learning day. Okay. Roll call.
Ms. Lauer,
Aye.
Dr. Powers,
Aye.
Ms. Scott, no. Mrs. Wise,
Aye.
Mr. Irwin,
Aye.
Mrs. Killian,
Aye.
Mrs. Lore.
Aye.
I think we are clear. Thank you. Thanks for the comments, and I am with Mrs. Moore also. I just have so appreciated comments from the community, the emails and the texts and the phone calls. I just have appreciated their input very much.
So before we move to the next citizen comments before the agenda, to address Stacy, Mrs. Killian's question about SAT. So,
Yes, and we do not control that. That's up in Indiana State.
So they would just have to just postpone their
Our-
testing then?
the SAT date is set by EPS.
Right,
So-
right. No, I understand.
It's at Terre Haute North. It's being held at
At
Terre
Terre
Haute
Haute North. Okay. I don't know if we would have anyone quarantined at this point. We would have to wait and see who it is. I believe you can take the SAT in an alternate time, but I would have to look into that, Mrs.
Yeah,
Killian,
it's been
before I
very
could
flexible.
speak correctly.
Thank you.
They've been more flexible than the ACT has been.
We just have one other speaker for the first call.
Right, we had the speakers on that specific topic, but we have another speaker. like to talk about the GT program.
Is that on the agenda?
That would be the
It'll be at the end.
That'll be at the,
Yeah.
that'll be at the second comments.
She
Understand?
was on first comments, wasn't she?
I don't think we have a GT program on the agenda.
Oh, that's true.
Now, thank you, thanks, Lynn. It'll be at the, since it's not on the agenda, it will be at the.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you,
Second.
Dr. Powers. Mr. Irwin seconded that. Roll call, are there any questions? Roll call.
Ms. Lauer,
Aye.
Dr. Powers,
Aye.
Ms. Scott, Mrs. Wise,
Aye.
Mr. Irwin,
Aye.
Mrs. Killian,
Aye.
Mrs. Moore.
Aye.
Right, we're looking at the finance committee. Mrs. Wilson, do you have anything to say about that?
You know, we did meet as a group on Thursday afternoon, and I believe that the questions were answered and submitted to all board members. So you would request approval of the docket.
We did meet, there were several of us who met and had a lot of discussion and some questions, and they were all answered by email later. So I don't think there are any other questions.
Jody, you're gonna close that door.
That's what I'm doing.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the finance committee at all?
I just wanted to say.
Yeah, Mr. Irwin, I don't know.
I didn't say anything. I don't recognize it.
Okay, I think we need, did we have a motion on that? Not yet. Okay.
I'll make the motion to approve the finance.
Thank you,
Second.
Mrs. Moore. Thank you, Mrs. Killian.
Thank you, Mr. Cox.
Mr.
Cox, pull over.
We have a roll call, please.
Ms. Lauer,
Aye.
Dr. Powers,
Aye.
Ms. Scott, Mrs. Wise,
Aye.
Mr. Irwin,
Aye.
Mrs. Killian,
Aye.
Mrs. Lord.
Aye.
Dr. Hayward couldn't be here tonight, he's probably glad. All right, regarding the donations,
We would request approval at this time for donations, backpack program, Booker T. Washington, Vivo Virtual Success Academy, Otter Creek Middle School, Rio Grande Elementary School, and Terre Haute North Vigo High School. Those documents are in the board packet. We would request approval at this time.
So moved.
Second.
thank you, Mr. Irwin moved to approve, Dr. Powers seconded that. Roll call, please.
Ms. Lauer,
Aye.
Dr. Powers,
Aye.
Ms. Scott, Mrs. Wise,
Aye.
Mr. Irwin,
Aye.
Mrs. Killian,
Aye.
Mrs. Moore.
Aye.
Thank you, Lord. Mr. Cox, personnel report.
President Lauer, Deputy Superintendent Dr. Goller, members of the board. Administration seeks approval for the personnel and professional leave request as presented.
I've got a question. Just because I'd like to follow this board. I noticed that Terre Haute North doesn't have a track coach in here. Is there one that hasn't been hired?
It has not been hired. They are doing interviews.
Okay, but we'll have one in place before our next board meeting with an action item of us voting before their season begins?
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure.
Yes.
Thanks. I make a motion to accept the personnel report as is, the professional legal request as is.
Thanks, Mrs. Wise. Is there a second? Mr. Irwin? Roll call.
Ms. Lauer,
Aye.
Dr. Powers,
Aye.
Ms. Scott, Mrs. Wise,
Aye.
Mr. Irwin,
Aye.
Mrs. Killian,
Aye.
Mrs. Lord.
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Miller? Recommendation to award bids for the network upgrade project. Do you have any specific comments on that?
No, other than we, not gonna let me off the hook there, are you? So I will explain just a little bit that we took bids for a network upgrade. We had good interest in it, good competitive bids, and I'm really excited about the prices that we got back. And the bid was written in a way that we could accept different portions of it from different companies, and by doing that, I think we saved a good amount of money. And so, as you see in the packet, there are 3 different vendors that we would like to propose to you to do the job. And so, what this job will really do will be to increase the wireless signal strength in our classrooms. It's moving some access points that are in the hallways actually into classrooms. And for those classrooms that don't have access points in them, it'll add them to the classroom. So when completed, we'll have wireless access points in all of our classrooms.
Great. Yes. And a needed improvement.
Yeah, really excited about it. I'd like to say that our wireless job will be completely done, but I think we'll probably still find that we're going to need some work in like auditoriums with more access points, gymnasiums, areas that I think we'll still want to give our network some attention after this update. But as far as the classrooms go, I think we'll be in excellent shape.
And I might add, as we move more students back to in-person learning, this is needed more than ever. So really appreciate this emphasis to more wireless access.
I so move approval.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Early moved to approve, Dr. Powers seconded that. Roll call, please.
Ms. Lauer.
Aye.
Dr. Powers.
Aye.
Ms. Scott. Aye. Mrs. Wise.
Aye.
Mr. Irwin.
Aye.
Mrs. Killian.
Aye.
Mrs. Moore.
Aye.
Next is the permission to set the fees for the new full-day pre-K and Dr. Goldberg.
Sure. At this time, we're very enthusiastic about bringing forth new full-day pre-K information, asking to approve tuition for participation in a full-day pre-K to be housed at Deming Early Learning Center. A rate of $21 per day for 180 school days will be set. There's no cost during breaks in the school year calendar. We will also have those students that qualify within Title I to have availability of a scholarship.
I just want to clarify on that because I emailed back and forth with Dr. Fenton about this, just for clarification purposes. On the $21 per day, we also have 4-year-old daycares like Bikes and Tykes, Little Braves, I forget the names of
Little
those.
Racers.
Little Racers, thank you. And that's $30 a day, but that extends past the normal school day. So that's 7:15 to 5 o'clock, whereas this would just follow the traditional school day, which is why there's a little bit of a price difference. And I clarified that with Dr. Fenton as to why that was.
Thank you.
And that was the reason is because it follows the traditional school day instead of more, air quote, daycare hours.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. So do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Yes.
I was wondering if you could just give me an idea of how many kids we're expecting to be interested. Do you have any idea what the interest is for that?
I know the director, Mrs. Bennett, has put out a great deal of information to see community interest, but I don't know that those numbers have come in yet. But we can continue to provide you with an update.
I'm just curious.
Sure.
Thank you.
Go ahead. That will be ever changing for a while, so
Sure.
we will. Mr. Irwin made a motion to accept, Mrs. Killian seconded that. Do a roll call. or you
Ms.
can
Lauer.
out there.
Aye. Dr. Powers.
Aye.
Ms. Scott.
Aye.
Mrs. Wise. Aye. Mr. Irwin.
Aye.
Mrs. Killian.
Aye.
Mrs. Moore.
Aye.
Wasn't sure you'd taken that with you. All right,
She planned
Mrs.
ahead. She planned ahead.
Mrs. Wilson, this
President Lauer, Dr. Goler, and members of the Board of School Trustees. Tonight, we ask your consideration of the resolution approving the form of lease for the Otter Creek Building and Renovation Project. The school corporation is funding the Otter Creek project through a lease financing arrangement as it has done with the past construction renovation projects. Lease financing are used by schools across Indiana in order to borrow for renovation and construction. At the March 22nd board meeting, the board will be asked to grant final approval on all remaining legal documents regarding financing of the Otter Creek project, including the resolution authorizing the execution of the lease and all building corporation documents. We respectfully request your approval of the form of lease resolution this evening.
And we've had the presentation regarding the Otter Creek additions in former board meetings, so thank you for that information.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Irwin moved to approve, Dr. Powers seconded that. Roll call.
Ms. Lauer?
Aye.
Dr. Powers?
Aye.
Ms. Scott?
Aye.
Mrs. Wise?
Aye.
Mr. Irwin?
Aye.
Mrs. Killian?
Aye.
Mrs. Lord?
Aye.
Now the preliminary bond resolution, Mrs. Wilson.
Everyone. Also included in this evening's board packet are two resolutions dealing with the initiation of the 2021 general obligation bond process. As you know, this is the fifth in a series of rolling bond issuances that address corporation-wide roofing, paving, and mechanical projects, as well as equipment needs of the school corporation. This bond issuance strategy was put into place to help offset our revenue loss due to the circuit breaker tax credits. I've provided you copies of slides prepared by Baker Tilly that address the corporation's position as it relates to bond issuances. These slides have been presented at prior board meetings and reflect our ability to enter into this debt without negatively impacting tax rates. The first resolution on the agenda is the preliminary bond resolution, which establishes the maximum amount to be borrowed at $5.575 million, the maximum term of repayment, and maximum interest rate. Keep in mind that if approved, we will meet again, and this will require an additional approval at the March 22nd meeting of the final bond sale documents, and we anticipate that bond sale not to be held until late summer. We respectfully request your approval.
I'd just like to say that at the last working session, I really appreciated the slide you provided that showed the debt falling off over a period of years. And I appreciate the work that's been done to set us up to deal with that responsibly while we're meeting the needs of our school building. So just wanted to say that.
Thank you, and I probably should add one additional thing. These rolling GO bonds are short-term repayments of between 3 and 5 years, normally between 3 and 4.
Is that a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion. Yes, let's approve that.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Lauer?
Aye.
Dr. Powers?
Aye.
Ms. Scott?
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss?
Aye.
Mr. Irwin?
Aye.
Mrs. Killian?
Aye.
Mrs. Lord?
Aye.
Mrs. Wilson, official intent to reimburse expenditures.
The second resolution in your board docket tonight your board packet tonight is the declaration of official intent to reimburse expenditures. This addresses the repayment of any preliminary costs related to the general obligation projects in advance of receiving the bond funds. The IRS requires that a school corporation declare its official intent to reimburse in order to reserve the right to do that in the future. We again request approval of this resolution.
So moved. You can have it, I'll second it.
Okay, any questions? All right, Mrs. Killian has made the motion to accept, and Mr. Irwin seconded that. Roll call, please.
Ms. Lauer?
Aye.
Dr. Powers?
Aye.
Ms. Scott?
Aye.
Mrs. Weiss?
Aye.
Mr. Irwin?
Aye.
Mrs. Killian?
Aye.
Mrs. Lord?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. You always do such a great job in explaining. Well, I appreciate it. Now is the time for second call for citizen comments, and we have would like to comment, and Samantha and Burgess, come on up. And you know we're the 5-minute time limit, and
I
please
can
say
speak
your
really
name
fast.
again.
All right, my name is Samantha, and I attended several meetings this fall to the school board regarding a particular teacher that my daughter was having not so pleasant experiences with. Those experiences did improve in that particular class, and she was able to overcome several obstacles. Recently, my daughter and I questioned a grade she received on an assignment. The results of these emails is that I have now been informed that my daughter has been removed from the GT English class and placed in a regular English class as of Friday at 5 p.m. I have now been told that this move does not require my permission as her parent. I've also been told that it is supposedly a unilateral move and that the two classes have the same curriculum. As that may be true, the rigor of the GT class is not the same outside of the GT class. We are informed the move is essentially taking place because of a personality issue between our daughter and the teacher. We have also been told that our daughter has sent abrasive emails. I have access to her emails and am not aware of any abrasive emails from her to her teacher. No one has provided any copies of the above-mentioned emails either. Taylor has been a member of the GT program since 2nd grade. She has maintained her grades and completed all assignments. She has never been disrespectful to any teacher. She currently also has an A in the class. My husband and I were to have a Google meeting. We thought to discuss some issues. However, this Google meeting turned into, they were informing us that we were to inform our daughter of the move. There was no discussion to be had. Taylor feels like she is being punished and is embarrassed and humiliated that she's been moved out of this class when she has clearly shown that she can handle the work. I fear that the so-called personality issue is not between my daughter and the teacher, but is between myself and the teacher. This should have no effect on my daughter's education. I have also not been able to find this policy that states my daughter can be moved from a class to another that is not truly a unilateral move without our permission. If Taylor was truly disrespectful, why was the counselor not involved in any of these issues? Where is the policy that states the child can be removed from the GT class when they are making the appropriate grades and not a disruption to class? Our daughter is not a threat to the teacher, nor a disruption. Taylor has been virtual this entire year, and the only interactions she has had with this particular teacher are through email and the occasional Google Meet. There are only 3 months left in this school year. Taylor should be allowed to remain in the GT English class where she can remain challenged. She has even tried to plead her own case and has received no return emails from anybody she has contacted requesting to stay in the GT class. Since the move was made in Canvas, Taylor's A has disappeared, and we have noticed that the assignments that are being assigned are ones that she completed in the fall. In fact, I spoke with her new teacher today and was told that they move at a different pace that is more accustomed to those students. Now, I've pulled up the GT Gifted and Talented, and it states that students enrolled in this program are of high ability or brought together with other students of similar abilities. Students are not only placed in a creatively challenging environment, but they have access to diverse, appropriate, quality materials that promote their greatest degree of individual skills development. The GT program will maximize a child's potential by allowing her or him to pursue a differentiated curriculum, which will accelerate his or her learning and allow her to become an independent yet interactive learner and leader. Throughout the program, students are placed with their intellectual peers so that student interaction can stimulate thinking and motivate productivity. Students are given instructional materials that are challenging as they are asked to lead discussions. How is this the case for Taylor when she's already completed the assignments that are being given to her now? Will she stay on pace for GT in the 7th grade? Will she be allowed to return to the GT English class? We've posed these questions to several people and I've gotten no responses. There was no discussion with Taylor, the teacher, the counselor, anything. It was, we're doing this to your child, make it happen. Now, Dr. Holder spoke earlier on the children's mental health. What about the decision to move Taylor with no discussion and how that has affected her mental health? She has excelled virtually. She has maintained A's in the majority of her classes without any issues. And now we're stuck where she is placed in a class doing remedial work that she has already completed. We have no apparent recourse according to the people that we have spoken with. And in fact, the GT coordinator was unable to answer several of my questions and then failed to get back with me after 4 voicemails today. And I even tried setting on hold because she was on another line, and eventually the secretary disconnected the phone call. And then it was 4:30, so there's no response. And sending the email out at 5 o'clock on a Friday was solely inappropriate. Because again, there's no recourse, it's just, hey, it's Monday morning.
30 seconds.
Here's your child, make do with what you've got. So again, if we're considering mental health and emotional well-being, why not consider that of all our students in the County and not just the majority. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Goller, please.
Sure.
I think
This is
Oh, I'm sorry.
I didn't sign my name, I'm sorry. I apologize, Mrs. Lauer.
Well, with the,
Go ahead and approach.
go
I
ahead.
failed at closing the door, I promise I failed.
But she tried.
I tried. I didn't jump, I ate dinner, I didn't want you to see anything. Good evening. I am not here to discuss the middle school and high school reopening as some thought. I'd like us to focus today that public education is facing a war on many fronts. Good evening, President Lauer. Good evening, Assistant Superintendent Goller, and members of the board. In a school year that has been combined with anxiety, stress, and confusion, our state legislators continue to pound public education into the ground. 93% of Indiana's students attend public schools, yet Mr. Heaton, Mr. Morrison, and Mr. Borders refuse to support their own local community by their lack of interest and concern in the Vigo County School Corporation. Elected officials refuse to fully fund schools, increase teacher pay, and restore bargaining rights. Most of all, they refuse to approve the learning conditions of our students. This is not the first time that I've stood here before you with concerns. One day, I hope I might find myself and elected officials focused on the same goal. Sadly, that is years away. Until then, we must find ways to take action at the local and at the state level. Tonight, I ask you to join with members of the Vigo County Teachers Association as I ask you and our entire staff to make a united stand by wearing black on Wednesday instead of our signature red for Ed. While this may be a symbolic statement, it can also be a call to action. Our community must press on to support our schools by increasing awareness of the defunding of public schools. And we must make a great effort to vote for those state leaders who would believe in Vigo County. For anyone who does not believe in public education does not support their own growth of their own community. Please join us Wednesday in saying yes to restoring bargaining, yes to fully funding our schools, and yes to increased teacher pay, and yes to the students of the Vigo County School Corporation. Wear black on a Wednesday to let all know that we must not give up and that we must continue to stand together for our students, for our staff, and for our community. Thank you.
Dr. Kohler.
Certainly. I would just like to conclude tonight by saying that this is truly a new territory for us as a community as we navigate COVID together. And we have several teachers and staff members in the audience tonight. And I'd like to recognize and thank them for working through all of these educational models with us in the spirit of teamwork for the sake of our students. So thank you very much.
And I would also like to recognize one of our new commissioners, Mike Morris, is here tonight too. I'm glad to see you here. You are welcome to come every 2 weeks of every month. Glad to have you. Any other comments from any board member?
I'd just like to echo what Jody was saying, and without going into a political side, I would just like to remind everyone to make sure you're registered to vote, and if you're registered to vote, tell 10 of your friends, because Indiana is the lowest of the 50 states for voting. So we need everybody to care about our teachers, and in caring about our teachers, then that will help all of us. As you said, it's a community benefit.
Well said. And mask, wash your hands, and stay distance. bring 10 of your friends next